Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Clarity and Confidence TV. Today, I have a super inspiring guest. I have Brooke Janousek with me. She is a marketing executive. She is a brand development expert. I'm sure she'll talk about her cute little puppies and her fixation with doing CrossFit in her amazing garage. But I'm going to let her tell us all about this, and I cannot wait for you to hear all of her story and her wisdom. So, Brooke, welcome. Would you love to tell everybody just a little bit more about you, just whatever you want us to know, what you do, your career, the things you love? We want to hear all of it. So,
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm super honored that you asked. And as you mentioned, I'm a marketing executive. I work at a company called SupportWorks here in Omaha, Nebraska, and I am the Senior Director of Marketing and Creative. I oversee the development of marketing strategy and all of the creative that leaves the building for all of our brands. So we are just in the throes of launching a national franchise called Hello Garage, which just so happens to be behind me right now, and I can explain that in a little bit. But we also have a software as a service company, and then our primary business is we are a distributor of products to home repair contractors for foundation and concrete repairs. So very busy in my professional life, and then in my personal life, I am obsessed with CrossFit. All of the memes are true about how if you do CrossFit, you talk about it all the time. So I could talk about that for a half hour if you really wanted me to.
And it may come up because I firmly believe that the things that you do in your personal life can be used and re-reflected in your professional life. And I'm sure you've learned lots of CrossFit lessons that you're like, I can use that at work. So maybe does one come to mind? What's something that you've learned from CrossFit that you're like, I could totally use this in the workplace?
Yeah, there's just so much every day. There is a new skill. It's a very humbling sport. And so I think about, I've got that mastered. And then you get into a workout and you're like, oh, no, I really don't. And there's just a real sense of mental toughness and also just not taking yourself too seriously. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I think, okay, I'm not curing cancer here. I'm just trying to generate leads, or I'm just trying to get brand awareness out there. So I do have to sometimes just take a step back and be like, don't be so hard on yourself. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. And in the women that I coach, I think you pointed on a really counterintuitive truth, mm-hmm. that for high achieving, highly motivated women, one of the things that we tend to believe is the harder I grind myself, the harder I am on myself, the more I demand perfection, then the better mm-hmm. I'll get.
Right.
But actually the opposite is true, I think. And mm-hmm. you really hit on that I'm really not curing cancer here. Mm-hmm. I really don't need to be perfect. So can you say more actually how that lesson that you learned from CrossFit, just about, I'm really not trying to be perfect, has actually helped you accelerate your career?
Yes. And I would say that this is a more recent realization for myself. I would say in the last couple of years, honestly. It could be the milestone birthday, or it could just be growing in wisdom and experience. But just realizing that at the end of the day, I tried my best and I did what I knew how with the information I was given at the time to make a decision. And if it was wrong, likely I'm not going to get fired over that decision, depending on how egregious the error was, but that it's going to be okay, and nobody has it figured out. And it took me a little while to realize that everybody is just trying to do their best, and everybody doesn't have it figured out.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I wish you could just say that. We should just say it louder for everybody in the back.
Yes.
Because I think that that's a common misnomer, is we think mm-hmm. that and I often say this when I talk about imposter syndrome, that we tend to overestimate others' intelligence mm-hmm. and underestimate our own. We think everybody has it figured out. And I love that this is a piece of wisdom that you're coming across, because mm-hmm. nobody has it figured out.
Nobody does. Right.
No.
And that's, I'm seeing a movement in social media from people like yourself and other influencers that I follow that are talking about that and bringing it to light. And it just really is freeing to know that other people are talking about it. I mean, people that I follow, like Sarah Blakely, whom I just totally idolize, respect, love her story. And to have her say the same thing, I don't have it figured out, is just refreshing to know that even, the first, self-made billionaire woman doesn't have it figured out.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, she created Spanx.
Yes. And she's awesome, an amazing entrepreneur. Her story is incredible, and I just love following her on Instagram. She's very inspiring.
Yeah, I love it. And I think some of the pressure as women through some of the messages that we've been told is that, hey, don't show up unless you have it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas men are subtly, not directly, again, this is all subtle, have been told that it's okay to get in and kind of figure
Mm-hmm.
it out on your way to the top. But I think that
Right.
something's just always been taught to us that says, hey, you really shouldn't raise your hand until you totally are sure, you're totally certain.
Right.
And so I love this dialogue that you say, which is so true. Like, no, we can figure it out along the way, just like everybody else.
Right. And you will surround yourself with people and resources that can help you figure it out too.
Exactly.
So that has also been a comforting realization as I've grown in my career.
That's amazing. So talk to me about, how would you define true confidence? What does that look like, or what does that mean to you?
Um, Again, something that I've come into in the last couple of years, but being able to speak my mind in a meeting, stand up for myself, and not have that internal dialogue of, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or oh, now they're thinking this about me. Just owning it, saying what I believe, and then leaving that meeting knowing I am proud of myself for speaking up and saying exactly what I feel and think about that topic.
Okay, this is huge. So this could
Okay.
solve like half the coaching conversations I have. How did you come to that? Like, how did you have the aha, or how did you develop just the mental resiliency to be able to do that? Because I think that talk track really keeps a lot of women
Mhm.
silent. So
Yes.
can you backtrack that for us?
Yes. And I'm sorry, I'm going to close my email so you're not hearing that. So I think uh, a couple things. So, yes, there is some mental resilience and some self reflection that I did, but I also think it's being part of a team that is very trustworthy. And so, being on a team where I am encouraged to speak my mind, also leading a team where I encourage my team to speak their mind and say, let's just enter the danger. Let's tell each other what we really think and feel, knowing that we'll have each other's backs. Even if we disagree, when we leave that meeting, we should all be unified on a final decision. So I think that's really key, being part of a trustworthy team. And there's a lot of things that you can do to develop that trust. But then on the personal side, there's just a lot of life experiences that have helped me realize that it's going to be okay, and you need to just stand up for yourself. And I think that's just, again, an evolution of maturity and wisdom that I've developed. I've read a lot of books. There's a lot of accounts on Instagram that I follow that are inspiring. I'm one of those people that writes quotes down and puts it on sticky notes. So if you were in my office, you would just see all these sticky notes around my monitor, just for things that I just need a quick reminder, like it's going to be okay. And I think you even gave me a quote one time when we were talking about um, the cave you fear to enter holds
The treasure you seek.
the treasure you seek. Yes, I did. I went back after we met and I wrote that down. It's on a sticky note on my monitor in my office. So there's
I
just
love
things like
that.
that that help me keep it forefront of my mind.
So we're going to come back to that at the end, because I'm going to
Okay.
have you give like your top 3 quotes, top 3 podcasts, top 3 books. So this will be
Okay.
great. But you said something. You need to enter the danger.
Yes. And I can't
Say more
take
about
credit.
that. I
Yeah.
like that. That's a good one-liner.
Yes, and I can't take credit for that phrase. We have an incredible consultant that works with us, and he has been saying it lately, and it just really stuck to me. And again, little phrases will stick with me, and I continue to remember them and say, okay, just enter the danger. It's going to be okay.
Mhm.
People will respect you more if you say what you're really thinking. We don't want to leave the room and then, later on I'm sitting there saying, oh, I wish I would have said this.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's okay to go there as long as you feel safe in that environment, that you feel, again, you have a trustworthy team that, even if I go there and I say what I'm really thinking, they may disagree with me, but at the end of the day, they're probably going to respect me a lot more because I stood up for myself.
Absolutely. And there's actually neuroscience that shows that when you have like a confidence mantra, which is, that's what I would call it, is,
Mhm.
enter the danger, or something that you repeat like something that makes you feel open and free and confident, like right before you have to go into a big meeting, a big presentation, or to speak your truth, it actually creates new neural pathways in your brain because
Mhm.
you think that way, and then you start to feel more empowered, and we always
Yes.
act based on how we feel. So I
Yes.
love that as your confidence mantra. And there actually
Yes.
is science to back up that saying those things before you speak up, it really works.
Yes.
So
And it's funny. So I'm going to bring it back to CrossFit. I told you I would. There is a podcast that I listen to regularly. And Ben Bergeron, who's a coach of several games athletes, has this fantastic podcast. And one day he was talking about mental toughness during a workout. And he said, alluding to the neuroscience, that so say if somebody tells you, don't look down, well, what are you going to do? You're going to look down. Or don't drop the bar. Okay, well, now I'm going to drop the bar. So he's saying coaches encourage them to hold on to the bar. You can do one more. Well, he said also that there is something psychologically that, you could say to yourself over and over again as you're in the grind to say, unfortunately, this will be over soon. Because your mind hears, unfortunately, first, it registers
yeah.
it, and then it's like, this will be over soon, which is like, oh, okay, I can do this. This is going to be over soon. And it kind of keeps you going. And I tried it during a really tough workout, and it really did change my perception. So I think
Oh, wow.
I have confidence mantras at work and then in the gym.
Yeah, but I know I love that twist, and that's something I haven't heard, and I'm all excited because I can actually think of something that I have to do where I'm going to use that.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this will be over soon, and I'll report
Yes.
back on my success.
Yeah. And it's also like if you get 5 rounds of something, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I have 4 more, it's like, no, I'm starting round 2. I'm starting round 3. I'm starting round 4.
Yeah.
So it's just reframing it differently. And it has really changed how I handle some of it.
So that thought, that thinking, right? When I think of it, I think about the times at work where I was like in the drudgery of a project, because
Yes.
no matter what, right? Every project starts out sexy and you always get to that part,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Or you're in just like a marathon, strategic event, or you're dealing with difficult people. Has that helped you move through
Yes.
some of those times where you're like, oh, this is the grind at work they talk about?
Yes. And I do have to have a little self pep talk. I also know about myself that I'm better first thing in the morning. And so if I know that I have to really grind out something I have to write, or I have to prepare for a presentation, I will block out my calendar for a couple hours in the morning so I know that I'm fresh and that I will get it done. That's even something I recognized about myself in college. I would never be the person that stayed up late till 3 a.m. studying. I would go to bed early, set my alarm early, and get up and then continue to study.
Yeah.
It's just having that awareness about when you're fresh and when you do the best work is also smart.
Oh, totally. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about one of the bravest career decisions you ever made.
Oh, brave career decision. I think anytime that I leave a job is a brave move.
Yes.
It's never easy to leave a job. I fortunately have had really good fortune in my career that I've been able to move to new places on my choice. So either I've been recruited or whatnot, and it's always been something that I reflect on quite a bit. I ask a lot of advice of trusted friends, family members. How do I make this decision? Am I making the right decision? And I think anytime you make a career leap, it's a brave move.
Yes.
And a lot of it has to do with what you were talking about earlier is, some of the imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh, now I don't know if I can really do this. They think I can do this. And now what if I get there and I don't know what I'm doing, which isn't true. But I think going in and turning in a resignation is challenging, but also very brave.
Yes. Okay. So you hit on 2 things, and I want to unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
One, you talked about like changing careers can be one of the bravest things that you ever do, which is so true. And I talk with and work with so many women who know they need to get out. Like they just kind of have that knowing. They're like, it's time. But like, it's scary because you said then you hit the imposter syndrome of like, but what if this is the only place I can ever be successful? Like, what if I'm found out? Like, what if, I get there and they're like, who in the heck did we hire? This is not what we thought.
Right.
So the first question I want you to answer is, what criteria did you use, or when you think about making those brave career moves to make sure that it was the right next step, like what was some of the criteria that you used? Like, how did you know? Like, what was a right company or a right next step, and what was like,
Mhm.
no.
Right. A lot of it is, I would, when I finally came down to the decision, I've had an offer extended to me, and now I need to decide, okay, do I want to accept this offer and leave? I will literally say things out loud and see how my body reacts. So I'll say, oh, how would I introduce myself at a cocktail party and say what I do? So I'd go through that. Okay, I'm Brooke Janousek and I work at XYZ. How to, take a moment, reflect how I feel, and then say the new position or the potential new position. How do I feel? Do I smile? Do I get kind of a little, pitch in my voice? Do I get a little butterflies, or am I just kind of wah wah about it? So that's one of the things. But again, I'm a list maker, so I'll definitely do the pros and cons list. And I also kind of go through worst case scenario. So what's the worst thing that can happen? I get over here and they find out that I didn't know how to do that as well. They're not going to, read me the riot act. They're going to give me an opportunity to learn and to grow. Or what's the worst thing that could happen? I get in here and I realize the culture is not what I expected. Okay, well then I'll look again because I know I'm employable. And I have to remember that too.
I love that. And that's like a good core underlying belief. But you talked about something that I'm super passionate about, and I teach in all my coaching classes, and that is a decision compass. And that is how it relates to what your body does.
Yes.
So I think as women, and I learned this far too late in life, we've been taught that our bodies are not trustworthy. You're too fat, you're too tall, you're too short, you need to lose 10 pounds, you'll be prettier when, you'll be more worthy when, right? Like, cover up, don't show too much. I mean, like, so many messages as women as we've been taught
Right.
about our bodies. And I think sometimes we just don't even really think about our bodies as like a valuable source of information. When in fact, our brains, our verbal brains process information at about 40 bits per second. But our nonverbal bodies process information at 11 million bits per second.
Oh, wow.
So when you say, like, I'm Brooke Janousek and I'm the senior director of marketing at SupportWorks, like, how does my body respond? Like, before your brain can even catch up, you already said you notice, like,
Right.
do I feel fluttery? Do I feel excited? Does it feel like yellow and happy?
Yes.
Or like, does my body constrict?
Mm-hmm.
And I think all too often we've just been taught, like, you should only make decisions here up because all of this here down just isn't a source of information. And that's actually untrue. And when I figured that out, it changed everything. So I'm so glad that you highlighted how that works for you, because I would encourage women when they're thinking about how do I know what the right decision is, your body is always trustworthy.
Yes.
Body never
It
lies.
is. It doesn't. And my gut has never failed me. And it's something that I've just always been in tune with, is just my intuition and following that. But it is a good exercise. Stand in front of the mirror, say it out loud, or practice it on your best friend or your spouse. Just, ask them what, did I get animated? Did I kind of shrink? All of that. You can get some good feedback that way.
Oh, totally. So let's move then to the second one, which is the whole imposter syndrome thing. So how do you beat the whole imposter syndrome that comes with switching jobs? Because that is really, I know, what keeps a grip on well, women, because that's who I mostly talk to, and why they don't make the leap.
So how do I get a handle on it? Again, I think it's going back to, I have probably 3 people that I rely on heavily. I say that they sit in my front row. They get a front row seat to my life. Not very many people get that ticket, and I trust them immensely. And so when I do have those moments of doubts, like, can I do that? I go ask them, hey, I'm feeling this way. Help, talk me through this. And I don't want somebody just to say, yes, Brooke, you can do it. I want somebody to say, okay, if you do feel that way, why is it that you feel that way? Do you truly have a deficiency? And if so, then how are we going to overcome that? And so if I have a deficiency in understanding a P&L statement, okay, then Brooke, what are we going to do to help you get more proficient in that? That's just one example of how to illustrate that point. But so I really rely on them. And I also, again, just take a step back and say, look at all that you've done you can do this. And again, you will be able to surround yourself with people and resources to help you figure it out if you can't. And when you get to a certain point in your career that you've managed people, you will assemble a very solid team. And so you have to also understand that you're not responsible for actually maybe doing all the work day in and day out. You're kind of orchestrating, overseeing everything, and trusting that your team can do it. And so you're not going to be able to be proficient in every single thing, but get some people that on your team that can, and you'll thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that, because I think so many women, well, and not so many, I'm just going to throw myself under the bus, believe the lie that like we have to do this all by ourselves. And like when I get there, I'm going to be all by myself, or that, you know, maybe the lie is that accepting help means that I'm weak, or I'm not smart enough, or it means that I'm not capable. And so I love how you have help in your life, both before and after, right? So you have this front seat row. Some women call them, I have like a virtual board of directors, you know, whatever it's like for you.
Exactly.
And you also recognize, well, then when I get in there, like, I'm not going to be the only person running the like in the marketing department. It's not like Brooke Janousek Inc. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You have people around you.
And I think that was also a hard transition for me when I moved into this role and had a large team. I realized that I'm not actually doing a lot of the day-to-day execution. I'm more setting the strategy, setting the vision, and then allowing them to feel fulfilled by executing and guiding them through that. And it was hard for me to get out of the weeds and feel like I didn't get anything done today because I wasn't able to check it off on a list. But then I think back to how many people stopped by my office, how many conversations I had, encouraging, motivating, helping solve problems. And I'm like, okay, I did get a lot done today. It's just a different sense of accomplishment now.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is a huge leap, is that if you are a list checker, or when you do become a leader, it's finding gratification in non-doing things. It's more like asking yourself different questions.
Yes, exactly. And I have found lately, as I've been facilitating quarterly planning meetings with my teams, I love that. I love that I get to see everybody, my direct reports, get some FaceTime with them, and then just hear about what they're facing, what's working, what's not working, and really getting in and helping solve some of those problems.
I love it. So tell me about your 3 favorite confidence boosting practices. So we already know one.
Yes.
Enter the danger. You've got some good confidence mantras, but what else? Like when you think about over your career, what's helped you boost your confidence, or what advice would you give others to boost theirs?
Well, I think finding something outside of work that you are passionate about is very important. Something that can literally take your mind off of the stress. You need to bring your whole self to work every day, and it's hard. There are things that happen in your life, little life quakes that come up that you weren't even expecting, and you have to still show up to work. And so it's really important to me that I have something outside of work that I can relieve my stress and just make me feel like, okay, I can go, it gives me energy. I can go tackle the day. And so I think that's super important. And then I also think, again, just having those little notes that for me personally is really a good reminder. All you need is just a quick reminder that, yes, everything's going to be okay, or you're fine. It's okay to say no. Those types of things really do help me stay grounded and remember that you got this.
Yeah, exactly. Can you think of a time in your career where, I like to say, you chose confidence over conformity? And maybe it was voicing an idea, or pushing through a project, or even just saying, like, being the only voice in the room that would say something. Can you think of a time where you just really like, no, I'm not going to conform to all this group think or what's happening. Like, I can say something.
Yeah. And I have to be careful because I don't want to out anybody or speak to a situation. But I guess if I can speak in maybe some generalities, during I just remember during a meeting, I was told you can just go ahead and take notes. And it was in front of a client, a paying client. And I was I felt so small, and it was literally go ahead and take notes. Like the hand gesture and everything. And I said, okay. And I started doing that. And at the break, I pulled that person aside and said, please don't ever do that to me again. I said, that made me feel about this small. You introduced me as one thing with a very high level title. And then the way that you just talked to me pretty much discredited everything that I have worked for in their eyes. That was a very difficult conversation for me to have, especially because it was with a person that was very high up, essentially owned the company. And and ultimately he respected, and he goes, you're right, I am so sorry. And he actually left the meeting and then just said, you're in great hands with Brooke. I'm going to let her take it from here. So it was just something that I had just had enough. And I was like, you're not going to do that. You know, the 22-year-old Brooke would have just said, okay, and not really stood up for herself. But I felt really happy that I did that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I have goosebumps because there are so many times, either I'm sure women can relate, in meetings or whatever it looks like, right? You've been invited to the table. You get there, right? You're like, I'm in the room where decisions are made, which is, my big one-liner. And then there's a comment, and it seems seemingly innocuous, but it's just like that slight, right? That's like, oh, and you're just here for the notes, right? How did you have the courage, or how did you know what words to say? Because I think women want to say things, but they're like, I just don't know what to say. Like, how do I say it? Like, how did you find the right words in that moment, right? Because I mean, you're feeling charged, and you're like, you don't want to say the wrong thing, but you got to say something.
Yeah. So again, I didn't want to embarrass myself or that person in front of the client. So thankfully I had a little bit of time to simmer down, but as soon as we took a break, I just pulled them aside and I said, I just want you to know that that was incredibly insulting to me. Please do not ever do that to me again. And I thought about it in the meeting, what I was going to say. And I thought, just be direct, be stern, but you don't have to be a total B. Just, let them know I didn't appreciate that. And please don't ever do that to me again. And you just leave it at that. You don't need to explain yourself, go any further. The point was very well received. And I wasn't, expecting an apology, but it was very much appreciated.
Wow. And I love how you just said, you know what, you just shared how you felt. You set your boundary. Please don't do that again.
Yes.
I also love just even the restraint, because I don't know if I would have done this, to explain how you felt. Because I think sometimes we get tempted then to justify that thing. So, I mean, kudos to you. And I think that's a message for all of us to just say, we don't always need to justify, okay, this is why I feel this way. Like, just say, oh, like, I didn't appreciate this, and this is something that I'm not going to tolerate going forward. Like, that's it.
Right. Oh. And nobody can tell you how to feel. It made me feel a certain way. And whether that was the intention or not, that's how I ended up feeling. So you can't tell me, oh, it wasn't that bad. Like, no, this is how I feel. So nobody can tell you how to feel.
I love it. I love it. So what advice would you give to women then, this is perfect, to help them establish their voice and take brave next steps in their career?
I think practice. So if you're going to enter the danger, if you know that there is a tough conversation that you need to have, I suggest practicing it. Depending on how you work, you could kind of type out what you want to say and then practice it, or you could talk into your phone and record it. Give yourself a couple times to hear what the words are to make sure that you feel confident in delivering them. And then just remember, I play out the scenario all the time. Well, what's the worst that's going to happen? Okay, so we get into a fight. It's not going to be the end all be all. We'll eventually resolve it. Or am I going to get fired? Okay, let's go down that path. What happens if I get fired? 9 times out of 10, the worst case scenario is not going to happen as a result of that. Yeah. The best thing that's going to happen is that you stood up for yourself. You're going to gain more confidence because you eventually did stand up for yourself, and you're going to feel really good about it.
I love it. Okay. So you said this a few times. You've asked yourself the question, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, like, okay, myself included, I'll think of a bad thing and then I'm like, oh, I don't want that. Like I'm just gonna do it. But this has had like an opposite effect for you. So I just share like either like what has asking that question, what's the worst that's gonna happen? What has that either allowed you to do or what or like what does that just kind of dispel for you that helps you act?
It's really freeing because, anxiety is thinking about something that could happen.
Yeah.
And so people get very anxious. Well, what if this happens? What if I send my son off, my 16-year-old son off, and he gets in a car accident? Okay, well, you're starting to worry about, you're borrowing trouble. That's not, that you don't need to. And so, yeah, you think about what's the worst that's going to happen. And then if that does happen, how would I address it? So again, what's the worst that can happen if I tell somebody off? I get fired? Okay. And then am I immediately going to lose my house? No.
Yeah.
You start to just play through those scenarios, and it's a very good calming, has a very good calming effect on me, because I'm like, okay, Brooke, you're being ridiculous. That is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's also another technique that I learned from somebody years ago, but if I start to get in a little bit of a, I don't know, snowball effect, as I say, and you start to go down that path, just stop yourself and look around and say, okay, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I taste? And that will just kind of start to reframe too, and stop that spiral.
Yes, it's called the 5 Senses meditation.
Okay.
And it's so easy to do to bring yourself back to the present.
Yes.
I tend to get in my head, that sort of thing. And so then like, wait a minute, and like feet on the floor.
Yes.
And then asking yourself those 5 questions.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. That's awesome. All right, so let's go back to the beginning, because you said you have Post-its, you have apps, you have podcasts. So let's just do like a quick rundown of like Brooke's favorite things. Okay, so what are like 3 of your favorite little one-liners you have just posted around you right now? Any good ones? And I know you're not maybe not at your home computer right now, but
yeah. So the one of the sticky notes that is front and center says, "There's nothing wrong with saying no."
Okay.
And that was something that I had to learn, through hard lessons. Then I have one that's actually a Bible verse from Isaiah, and it says, "At the right time, I, the Lord, will make it happen." And I'm very private about my religion and my spirituality. You never really hear or see me talk about it, but that one is really key for me, because I just have this belief that everything has to happen at this time. And it didn't happen at 40. And so why isn't it happening at 41? And so I finally had to realize that life is not a linear path, and it will happen at the time it's supposed to. And then the other one was the one that you told me. So let's see if I can remember it exactly. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek.
Yes, and that's a Joseph Campbell quote. Yes. So when you talk about life isn't linear and like this, the private spiritual life, I'm right there with you. One of the most aha moments I had when my life was not unfolding the way I thought it would was somebody told me once, well, the Bible isn't even linear, right?
Oh.
I was like,
oh my God.
They're like, no, it's like organized by theme. And I'm like, because life isn't linear. And I'm like, right.
Like, huge revelation to me too. I did not know that.
I'm like, oh my God, this is like a metaphor for my entire awakening. Like none of this is linear. It all is clustered by what needs to be taught. And I'm like, oh. Okay. So podcasts. What podcasts do you love?
I love How I Built This with Guy Raz from NPR, my all-time favorite podcast. He interviews entrepreneurs and talks about how they got their business started. So Sarah Blakely was the first episode. He's interviewed everybody from the founder of Chipotle to Patagonia to Wayfair and everything in between. I also listened to the CMO podcast with Jim Stengel. That one is just a very niche thing for me. He interviews chief marketing officers. And then finally, from a CrossFit perspective, I listened to Chasing Excellence with Ben Bergeron. So he has a lot of great tips, not only just about CrossFit, but about life and mindset and how you set your intentions for the day. And so those are the 3 that I don't miss.
Awesome. And I think the last category was books, correct?
Yes. Books? Yeah. So I just got a book called Life is in the Transitions, literally arrived at my doorstep yesterday. I was listening to the Goop podcast, and they had interviewed the author of that. And he has this whole book about how life is not linear, and it's fantastic. So far, I was reading it last night. Excuse me. So that one is good. I also, I'm trying to think. Oh, I just read Simon Sinek's new one, the
Infinite Game?
Infinite Game. I was going to say the End Game, but that's a movie. The Infinite Game. That was really good too. I really liked that. And then I'm trying to think of, there was a book that I read years ago when I worked at the Nebraska Alumni Association, and it was called Fish On. And
Oh,
it's just a really short book, and it's about the fishmongers at Pike Place Market in Seattle and how they just the types of things that they do every day, how they have fun. And it was just a different way of thinking about what we did to bring, every day, what did we do to bring some joy to our life? So the book is really a quick read, but it has some great lessons in there.
let's talk about one of your other favorite things that maybe I know about you that we
Yeah.
haven't talked about yet. And let's talk about the Enneagram. How
Oh, yes.
discovering that you are an Enneagram 3 helped you?
Um, that was just like, oh my gosh, this is everything that I am. And can I just read something to you because I
Yes.
just saved it today?
Yes.
I follow a lot of these Enneagram things on Instagram, and for a 3, it says motivating matters, thrives on goal setting, high energy, competitive, loves lists, and never meets a stranger. And so
Yeah.
that was just so anything with the 3 is just every time I read it, I'm like, that's exactly me. I am very competitive. I'm very hard on myself. I'm always setting goals. I'm like, okay, what's the next thing that I can do? I love a challenge, and I have high energy. I'm very extroverted.
Yeah.
So I
What's
think
the Enneagram taught you to stop doing?
So one of the things, and it just hits home, is they have sometimes a lot of sayings for just one thing to remember for a 3, and mine is always you are enough. So like no matter what Instagram account I see, the 3 is always you remember you are enough.
And
that's
not the next title or the next thing or the next
Nope.
badge. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. It's so wonderful in self-discovery.
Yeah.
For those who are wondering now, I'm a 5, which is 3 was my second, but a little bit opposite than a 3.
Yeah.
But you guys can do a little more research, and I'll be talking about it more come December, depending on when you're listening to this.
I love the Enneagram.
I do too. It's been a wonderful discovery for me in the last couple of years, and just now talking about it more. But last thing, I want them to tell you about the project that you are super excited about right now, which is launching a brand new national brand. So just as we close today, just tell everybody about what you did with this and why you love it so much, and just whatever you feel like they need to know.
Yes. So just a quick 2-minute drill is that Hello Garage is a franchise. We launched it last November after about 2 years of research and development, figuring out which category we wanted to go into next. And I am just so proud of everything that we've accomplished. I was part of naming the company and developing the brand strategy, position, the purpose, working with the team to come up with the logo and the colors and the brand voice, and then all the way through execution. So how are we going to recruit franchisees, and how are we going to sustain the business, getting the word out? And it's just been the amount of work that we've done in less than a year is truly remarkable. I love how scrappy the team has been, how hard all of us have worked. And it's been so rewarding professionally. I have never had the ability or opportunity to work on franchise marketing and developing a franchise from scratch. And so that's just something that, not very many people get a chance to come into and literally start one from the ground up.
That's awesome. What do you love about branding so much? What is it?
Brands make you feel something. And so it's been cool to develop a brand that's going to make people feel something. But I just love how they make you feel. And that's how you become a brand loyalist and an advocate, is it resonates with you and it makes you feel something.
I love that. So let's close on this. I believe personally that women should see themselves as a brand. So what advice would you give women who are trying to build a brand for themselves, from the branding expert herself?
Yeah. Authenticity first and foremost. People will see through somebody trying to be something, or a company trying to be something that they're not. And so authenticity is first and foremost the most important thing. And so that means being your true self, on all of your social accounts. Don't be afraid to post something that may be polarizing, that's how you feel and that's your authentic self. Don't try and be on one side of the fence or not because you think that that's what people are expecting from you. But also be mindful too of what you post. To the younger women out there, we are looking at social accounts before we even consider an interview. And so just be mindful of things like that, or make your account private and know that future employers are looking at all of that.
They are. Well, and I think you hit on something, authenticity, but there's a difference between posting something polarizing because you're trying to start a fight and advocating on behalf of your values. And I think discerning the difference is key. So, because you can do it very tastefully.
I agree.
You can do it very not tastefully.
Right. You do it because you're trying to get a rise out of somebody.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, this was amazing. Okay, so what's something I didn't ask that you feel like women should know who are trying to advance their careers, get into the rooms where decisions are made, or just trying to show up as their best selves and be more confident? Anything I didn't ask you?
No, I think it's just borrowing some of my own mantras, but you are enough, and realizing that you are and believing that. And surround yourself with really good people. People that you want in your front row. Don't give everybody a ticket. Those are VIP tickets.
Exactly. Those VIP, they are VIP tickets, and they're the price to access.
And they have to be earned.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so where can people find you if they're like, oh my gosh, I need to go follow all of her CrossFit and everything else, or her journey? Tell us.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Brooke Janousek, and I will be talking about the Hello Garage journey for the next couple of weeks on LinkedIn. And you can find me on Facebook. I don't post a lot on Facebook, but and then I'm also on Instagram as Early Riser, because I am an early riser. And I get up early in the morning to work out, and that's when I'm most productive.
Yes, and I will tell, I can vouch that your Instagram account is inspirational and entertaining, and like loving's not the right word, but just very like, aw.
Well, thank you.
Oh, it was an adjective. That's what it would be.
It's full disclosure, it's mostly CrossFit, my dogs, and my nephew is a niece. So
which is why it's awesome. And random Enneagram memes. So it's great.
Yeah, exactly. That too.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. I know there are so many women who are going to take so many nuggets of wisdom off of everything that you said. And I really am so happy to have you here, because you articulated in such great words what it looks like and what it feels like to bust beyond some of the own prisons we create for ourselves, just in terms of, some of the things that hold us back on, of things we're thinking about, things that hold us back in our careers, things that hold us back for speaking up. So there were so many nuggets that I think are worth a takeaway here, in terms of not only showing up as your best self in the rooms, but also making the right decisions for your career. So thank you so much. So
thank you for asking me.
You're welcome. Thanks guys for joining, and thank you for coming to Clarity and Confidence TV.